Hello, greetings and salutations. Welcome to Buffalo Fireside Chats. I am here with ILUS International Managing Director and Quality International CEO, J.P. Backwell. J.P., welcome to the VFC.
Thanks very much, Eric. Nice to meet you. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. So it's been one hell of a journey over the last 2 years. You, Nick, and the whole team. The developing ILUS conglomerate has made amazing progress. Let's take it from the top. How did this ILUS journey start for you? How do you feel about where you are at currently, and how do you vision the future of the ILUS conglomerate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So actually, my journey with ILUS started when I joined ILUS's first acquisition, Firebug, way back in 2014. And that was when Nick approached me, Nick Link. He approached me to join him in building that business, in building Firebug. And at that stage, I'd been heading up sales for a Canadian public company. I was doing lots of travel. I was earning lots of money. And I traded that in to join a startup. I believed in Nick's vision. And I began traveling lots and earning very little money. So, it was a bit of a change, but an exciting one. And I think what I'll never forget about what caught my attention early on was Nick saying that we're going to build this thing and we're going to take it public one day. And that was back in 2014, right? Wow. I joined Nick, and together we built the business through all its ups and downs, many ups, many downs. And out of Firebug, ILUS was then born. So I guess you have an idea of that journey since January of 2021, when we took over as management of ILUS. So that's the background. In terms of how I envision the future of ILUS, we've accomplished a huge amount in less than 2 years, really. So I don't think there's many OTC companies that have accomplished what we have in such a short period of time. Yes, their share prices might run off the back of a planned merger or a deal or some sort of hype like that, but very few have actually delivered what we have in such a short period. And, from my perspective, many OTC investors, I think it's far more exciting to watch things take off than it is to watch them fly continuously for a long period of time. And that's us. We're the latter, I think. We're firmly entrenched. We're now doing over 20 million in revenue a quarter, but yet we have a share price of 7 cents or thereabouts. So yes, we've got huge things coming, and the market isn't necessarily aware of that. But ultimately, we're just building our business, day in and day out, and that's not exciting for people to watch and necessarily appreciate. It's just lots of continuous hard work. A lot of it isn't glamorous, and but that's what it takes to get where we're going. So I digressed a little, but in terms of the future, we're about to be fully reporting. We're taking the necessary steps to move to a major stock exchange. And with what we've done so far, with what we're building, we're really, we're not going to hang around on the OTC for much longer. We've said it many times, but we'll be a global conglomerate. We aim to be a dominant force in public safety, in manufacturing, and many other sectors. So, personally, I don't think it's going to take us very long to become $1 billion revenue company that's transforming the sectors we're involved in. And then further down the line, I believe ILUS will be a brand name. It'll be a household name globally. But that's my own personal vision, Eric, for the company. So I understand that I'm fortunate to be at the helm, where I can look and I can see exactly where we're headed. And I get that not everyone will agree with me because they can't see what I can see. So that's fine, but ultimately our future is incredibly exciting. Ridiculously exciting. In fact, for all those that are on this journey with us.
I like that. Ridiculously exciting. That's good. That's promising. There are many things that go into acquisitions. I could just imagine. Could you educate us a bit on the beginning criteria for a potential acquisition, like right through until when the deal's closed? And what are some red flags that you've encountered that would negate a potential acquisition?
Yeah, thanks. So look, when it comes to acquisitions, the process is, because rarely an acquisition can take, 3 months up to 2 years or even more than that. So the process is we first decide which businesses we're pursuing. It's based on our strategy. So for whether it's for ERT, for QIND, for the defense subsidiary, which there's some exciting news coming about that, or other. We have an acquisitions manager, a guy who hangs behind the scenes, a guy by the name of Kingsley Warman. And he typically will then engage with the targeted companies that we as a board have decided to go after. If it's a larger deal, then either myself or if it's ERT related, Dan Peters will get in contact. And then if there's interest, either we'll have an online call or an in-person meeting if it warrants it. Normally an online call. We'll then sign an NDA and the actual discussions will start. And as part of that process, we'll normally obtain their financials and we'll do some initial due diligence. And following that, we then determine how we would like to structure an offer for the business, if indeed we would. And we do that in the form of a letter of interest, or you'll hear us maybe talk about an LOI or a letter of intent. And that's effectively just an offer for the business. And then comes the difficult, lengthy process. That's when we negotiate, and that process can take months, Once that LOI is signed, we then conduct some seriously detailed due diligence. So every little detail of the business is scrutinized. And assuming we still then wish to proceed, we'll either revise our offer and we then prepare what's called a share purchase agreement, a sales agreement. That then requires further negotiation. So, all going well, we then move to signing. There are also some other documents like escrow agreements, employment consulting agreements, and all sorts. But for simplicity's sake, that's a brief summary. The actual closing date of the acquisition could be set at a period a few weeks or even months after the signing of the share purchase agreement, depending on the payment terms and other terms. There might be payment tranches and things like that. So, the closing date would be set accordingly. And then also, I think, bear in mind, Eric, that we can take deals right to the point of signing and then hold them for when the time is right for us as a business to actually sign a share purchase agreement or even sign a letter of intent if indeed necessary. So, and that would happen based on our strategic moves. And that's largely the phase we're in right now. So in terms of red flags, you asked about red flags. We've encountered many of those. Really many different types. We've walked away from many deals. I would say that 80% of the deals, we look into or even make offers on, we walk away from for various reasons. We assess the risk. For example, if a company is heavily reliant on a single customer, that could be a significant risk. I mentioned that as an example because recently we had a company which we were very interested in. 88% of their revenue came from one customer, a defense customer in the US, which could be perceived as positive, but we perceived that as a significant risk because it's a manufacturing business. And if they lost that company, that customer, that's 88% of their revenue gone, right? We also heavily interrogate the balance sheet, the accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, loans, so on and so forth. So that's for us where most deals end up falling over, when we really dig into their balance sheets. But I guess even before that, when we assess the value for ILUS and for its shareholders, if someone wants a 10 times multiple of EBITDA for their business, so let's say their EBITDA is $1 million and they're wanting 10 million for their business, and we feel it's worth 4 times multiple, we feel it's worth 4 million, then that takes serious negotiation. And believe it or not, we don't always get our way. Or we don't always agree something right away. Sometimes we walk away from a deal and they may come back to us and then we get closer to the price that we're wanting to achieve for a deal. And sometimes they just don't work out. We just don't get our way. And then there's the added complexity as a public company, because remember, everyone wants us to close deals, but they don't want us to pay anything for those deals. So, because of course, public companies are expected to close, but they're not expected to issue any shares along the way for them, right? That's the irony that we have to deal with. So even though obtaining capital is a primary reason companies go public in the first place, it's still a challenge that we face. So of course, we're going to negotiate, harder than anyone can imagine. And of course, we may often walk away if that deal doesn't benefit ILUS or it doesn't benefit the shareholders. We see them very much as one and the same. And that's why if you look at the details of our acquisitions to date, I think the details are in our Form 10. If you know where to find them and you know how to look at the Form 10, you'll be able to see those details in there. You can see that we've not issued many preference shares to sellers. And that's part of us just doing our best to obtain optimum value in every way for every deal that we do. Hopefully that gives you some insights into the process, the challenges we face along the way.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put the link to the Form 10 down below so that way you guys could click and have a little nightly read. because all this information is there. Thanks for answering that question. How many acquisitions does ILUS intend to close in 2023 with the best and worst case scenarios? Obviously, the economy and supply chain is going to impact this. And will they be ILUS purchases, subsidiary purchases, or a combination of both?
Yeah, I'll say this, Eric. The ILUS you know right now today is not the ILUS you know tomorrow. And by that, I mean, in 2023, we're going to be on a whole different level from where we are now. So it's not necessarily about the number of deals in 2023. It's about the size of the deals and the value that they add to the business. So I'll give you an example. If a holding company is doing 160 million revenue and owns 14 companies, how do I classify that? Because it's one acquisition, right? So, but we're also looking at companies even that are doing 2 or 4 or 10 million revenue. And that's specifically because the value they're adding from a manufacturing standpoint, or because of the value they add just in the UAE, for example. They're complementary to other businesses in that region, as an example. But to answer the question a bit more directly, I'd say all in all, we're currently doing due diligence on more than 15 businesses at the moment. We're definitely in a position to close at least 5 tomorrow if we needed to. But that ultimately comes down to our strategy. And it's why we talk about the calm before the storm, right? So
that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I know that tweet is sending waves through the ILUS shareholder community. And going back to that preferred class, could you explain a little bit of the usefulness of those preferred share classes that you guys use at ILUS, and how what its role is in like building the conglomerate and acquiring companies?
Yeah, I'll do that now. Just to go back to that tweet briefly, I think sometimes when we're most quiet as a business, that's when the biggest things are getting accomplished. And it's literally because our heads are down. We're at the grindstone, we're grafting, and we're getting things done. And there's a huge amount of behind the scenes work that goes into us getting where we're going. But to the question about preferred shares, so of course they're useful for us, as they are for any public company, not just ours, to obtain capital to grow the business. That is the primary reason. It's why companies go public. So we use that capital to expand the operations and the overall capability of the business and to complete acquisitions. So take, for example, the $1 million used as a first tranche payment for the acquisition of Quality International. That's a prime example, right? They're also, of course, used for incentivizing management and key staff in our business. So it's why I have some preferred shares. It's not like my salary is anything to write home about, right, Eric? So,
and you would know that if you guys look at the Form 10, all right? Do the
exactly,
reading.
exactly. I earned more than 10 years ago. So ultimately, I'm driven to grow this company because in addition to the difference it makes, which is something my family can be proud of and something my kids can be proud of, because I contributed to it. It also provides them with a valuable stake in something, right? So that's why I'm involved in this business, because it gives my kids something, for their future. It secures the financial future for my family and others, and I know it's probably why people like yourself are invested in this business too, right? And it justifies the huge sacrifices we're making now and for many years to come. So it's an investment for us. At some points in the future, we may be entitled to a reward for what we've built. But we're a long way from building what we've envisioned, Eric. So, in summary, they play a role in us building the company and they incentivize our team along the way. As I said, it's one of the main reasons companies go public. We specifically went public to accelerate our growth because the industry we were in was stagnant. It still is largely, with outdated, with traditional technology. And so we had to change that. And that's why we are, and that's why we're progressing. And as I said, we're going to a whole new level.
That's awesome. That is completely awesome. So far this year, all right, your numbers look strong. You guys have completed the audit, and you even included the first 2 quarters of this year in said audit. In quarter 2, 19.6 million in revenue, 1.1 million in net profit, 55 million in assets, and 9.6 million in working capital. Where do you ultimately see ILUS International in regards to revenues, profitability, and overall valuation by year's end and projected onto 2023?
Yeah, well, we grew in Q3 as well, so that'll be evident soon. We're always looking to increase both revenue and profits. We're in the midst of a strong Q4, and I would expect an increase in revenue at this stage. So I would say we're still on track to reach our revenue run rate for the year. Financial performance, of course, is hugely important for us, and we are delivering on that front. I mean, that is evident. We've got audited financials and things like that, but we've only been going for 7 quarters. So yeah, and that's why it was really important for us to get PCAOB audited, to show that we have valuable businesses in our group already. And think about why we were becoming fully reporting. You could actually argue all it does is actually create extra work for us. But there has to be a very significant reason why we've taken that specific step. And that's what leads us into 2023. So, I mean, up until now, our focus has been on putting a launch pad in place for astonishing growth in the future. Our focus hasn't really been specifically revenue, even though we're doing 20 million a quarter or thereabouts already. So what you'll see in 2023 is us operating from a whole new level in terms of deals and their associated revenue. As I said earlier, the ILUS now is not the ILUS of 2023. So it's almost irrelevant to assess the future from your current point of view. But if I had to give you a forecast since you've asked, I would conservatively expect us to do upwards of 300 million revenue in 2023. But again, that's my personal view, right? But with the deals we have on the table, it's also possible to do much, much, much more than that. So, at our annual shareholders meeting, we'll talk in more detail about our forecasts. And I think at that point, you'll have more visibility of where we are at by then. And you'll see clearly for yourselves why huge revenue potential is possible for the business.
Excellent. The share lockup. Could you, and yes, I'm going to say timelines, because quite frankly, I think you guys and the entire team have done a fantastic job in displaying transparency and you've kept us in the loop nicely. Could you give us a general timeline or an indication as to when the share lockup details are going to be released?
Sure. Yeah, look, I can't give you the actual specifics, but I'll answer the question. Details of the share lockup, they'll be announced in conjunction with the move to a major stock exchange. That's the best way I think I can put it. For shareholders to understand the potential benefits of the lockup, they need to know our next moves. They need to know what those moves are as a company. So it's almost pointless for us to go and announce the details now, even though we know a lot of those details, without you knowing the linked information, right? Because how are you going to assess the potential benefit for you if you don't know exactly the moves we're making as a business, and we can't tell you what those moves are yet. Otherwise, I would gladly tell you. So I get a lot of emails about it, more than 10 a day from shareholders asking for information on it, and I don't mind. I can't even necessarily answer all of them, but the reality is just keep an eye on our Twitter. They should keep an eye on our press releases, and the information will be out fairly soon. So that's really what I can say. It's hugely beneficial to shareholders who are involved. So yeah, I think just really stay tuned.
Yeah. So, and this is a question that I just got last second. Can shares in tax deferred accounts like IRAs, are they going to have the ability to lock up shares?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, we're looking at all the options. So, and there's many more than what you've mentioned, and there's a lot of complexities in this. So,
is a share buyback on the table as well?
Yeah, it is something we're looking at. We don't see it as important as the lockup, if I'm honest, which is why we mentioned specifically about the lockup, because it is something we are certainly looking at doing. And the buyback itself is something we're assessing.
All right. So a couple of questions. I got a bunch more questions, actually. But the shareholder meeting, let's go there for a second. Is there anything you could give us right now in regards to location, time, date? Right now, are we still waiting on that?
Yeah, and I can understand it's getting close and people need to book travel, and some people tend to want to book travel far more in advance than I do. So I get that. Look, next week we'll make an announcement about it, and shareholders will be able to register online for the meeting. So from that, we'll have an idea of the numbers in order to actually confirm the venue. If you remember, well, I think you said you joined us as a shareholder around about May, right? So
Yep.
so
May last year. Yep.
After the previous, right? So okay. So the point is, we previously got an idea of numbers and then we confirmed the venue. So we've got a few venue options within a specific venue, and obviously, different conference rooms, for example, right? So based on the numbers, we'll then confirm the exact venue. So once we have that, then we'll send out official invites. So you'll have an opportunity to register online, register your interest in attending the event, and we'll then send out official invites to all those who've registered their interest. What I can say now, because I know you want to know, I guess, where it'll be, what the date will be. So we're looking at holding the event in the Miami area, more so the Boca Raton area, just north of Miami. And we're looking at the 27th of January as the date for the event. So as I said, next week, we'll put some information online for people to register. We'll obviously make an announcement on Twitter and maybe even a related press release or something along those lines. I understand it's East Coast for many. I know it's a lot of travel. If you're coming from California, if you're coming from far north, I get that. But for us, it's very important to have various interested parties attending who are going to be instrumental in our growth plans. It's important for us to get those people attending the meeting as well. And so that's why we've assessed. We were looking at Vegas, but we've decided to go with Miami area. It's going to be a really action-packed event with a lot more detail than the last meeting. So, there's a lot to discuss, and I think there's also going to be a lot to celebrate. So just bear in mind also, for those who can't attend in person, there will be the option to attend virtually. And we've had a bit of practice at this, so we'll make sure the virtual events is done a lot more professionally. We had a bit of issues with the events company last time, so we'll put a very specific focus on those attending virtually. I mean, I think the NOBO list of shareholders is over 40,000 shareholders that we have. Obviously, we're not expecting that anywhere near that would look to attend virtually, of course, but point being, we'll make sure that virtual experience is far better than it was last time around. And then we'll only be allocating around 200 seats for those attending in person. So it'll be important for people to register their interest as soon as that announcement is made, if you are wishing to attend in person.
Awesome. I'm getting very, very excited about that. I know many people in the Discord are. All right, let's keep it going. We have not heard any updates about the status of A-level certification you spoke about last year that would lead to bigger projects for BCD like Boards 2020. Can you bring us up to speed on that, and if anything has came up of it?
Yeah, so the reason we've not spoke about it, for very good reason, is because there's actually an acquisition underway involving a company which has the required certification. So I mentioned UAE acquisitions earlier, and up until now, BCD has been involved in that large project, Boards 2020. It's gone on to have various phases. And they've been involved in that project as a subcontractor. So the actual certification has proved surplus to requirements in 2022. So with the acquisition that we are planning, I mean, it's one that we can close very, very soon. Some aspects of BCD's operations will merge into that of the acquired company, and therefore BCD will automatically have the certification that it needs. Yeah, and as I said, it's an acquisition we can close tomorrow if we want to. And we're just timing it with other developments that are underway in the UAE.
That's excellent news. All right, and some people have been talking about ILUS coin. I have to bring up ILUS coin. There are fairly regular tweets that claim the coin is going to help communities, but we've yet to see any details on the projects that are even being considered. Can you provide any update on ILUS coin?
Yeah, so we've actually been looking at two projects for the ILUS coin, one in Argentina and another in Madagascar. I am seriously considering moving forward with the Argentinian project, but that is in line with developments on the wildfire front. So we need to get that side of our business shored up first. That specific project involves a community in the Corrientes province of Argentina. So it's been severely impacted by wildfires. They don't have their own fire services nearby, and they need to protect themselves. And so we've been in talks with them about various different solutions for them, from vehicles through to equipment. But essentially, it's about protecting their homes themselves. We've been looking at various options. As I said, that's the one I personally am wanting to move forward with. It's like many things, it's come down to bandwidth really, and getting the deals done in line with that. So we're looking at those options for them. We'll pick it up as we take our next big steps as a public company, because it's important also that as we take, these next steps that we're taking, community involvement and contribution and sustainability and things like that become far more important as deliverables for us about, in the business. And so we're going to have more team members to actively drive these things going forward in the future. So
Great.
Hopefully it answers.
Great. So for all those concerned about ILUS coin, there you go. On July 6th, you tweeted that Vallfirest, Vallfirest products. I always mess up that word, by the way. I can't get it right.
Yes.
Vallfirest. Oh my gosh. Come on, get it straight. Their products are now available through Georgia Fire and Rescue. And are we going to update that website? And are we going to have those products on that website? Yeah.
So Vallfirest is a freaking awesome company, I must say. And I get on very well with their CEO. He's a great guy. There's things going on, but the products themselves are currently being sold through Firebug firstly. So that I think answers the first part of the question. Although they will start to be sold by Georgia Fire in North America pretty soon. They are actually already being sold in North America already. But as I said, they're currently being sold through Firebug. In terms of the Georgia Fire websites, the actual overhaul of the website is already underway, but bear in mind that it's over 1,000 products. I mean, I have arguments with the marketing team all the time. Why is this not done yet? Why is that not done yet? And then they show me and I'm like, I get it. It's over 1,000 products. They each require their own web page with technical specifications, updated photographs and things. So it's really no small task, and they do have a lot of tasks that are ongoing. Now, this is where you get to the crux of the matter. Georgia Fire itself is actually doing very, very well as a business. I think it's going to grow around about 30% in this year, right? So we're rebranding the business, and that's including a name change for the business. It's going to be called GFR, which sounds really simple, but it's still a big change for a business. And bear in mind, you don't just do a big fix to things which ain't broke, right? As I said, the business is growing. It's doing really well. You make those changes incrementally in a way that it doesn't cause a growing business to lose momentum. So shareholders can look at it and go, well, this website's really out of date. Why don't they just update it? Well, it's pretty simple. If you don't know the ins and outs of the business, you can look and say it's outdated. But if a firehouse making a purchasing decision in that region knows the brand, and they trust in that brand and the people behind it, and they're extremely territorial and traditional, the moment you turn a dial, that buying decision can be put on hold. If you change a website, for example, also the SEO, the search engine optimization, has to be refreshed, and that can take 45 to 60 days. So you could lose sales in the process. So that's why I speak of incremental changes. So when people visit FDIC in 2023, they'll see the new brand. They'll be introduced to it. They'll see that it's backed by a big board public company, and it becomes a whole lot easier to then roll things out, right? Because now they can associate this new brand with the previous brand, and that transition starts to be made. But yeah, don't confuse that with the wildfire progress though, because we are ready to close on acquisitions, and we'll do them when the time is right in line with our bigger plans. So for now, we have the products in our range. And also, I don't think people necessarily realize, but we are selling wildfire products already. So, or solutions, should I call them that rather? Bullhead, for example, Bullhead Products has got orders for firefighting skid units, and those incorporate Vallfirest pumps in them. And they're going to be obviously used for fighting wildfires. So things like that are ongoing.
Great. I got to ask this question because there are a lot of us, there's a lot of us drone geeks out there, and and we see the impact that it's going to have in the future. I like flying my drone. I know Arlex likes to fly his drone as well. But are things progressing nicely with the restructuring of the Vira Drones contract? And do you see product development moving at a more rapid pace in 2023? And will there be product demos?
Yeah, I'll answer the question about Vira specifically, but I think just to fire one back, how many drone companies do you see out there that are carrying payloads of upwards of 250 kilograms? I don't know what that is in pounds. For a lengthy period of time. And then the big question is, how many of those companies are actually delivering any revenue, right? Probably none of them. In fact, I imagine they're all operating at huge losses. So, it's important for us to structure things correctly. But I think, as I said in a previous Q&A, we're going through that restructuring with Vira Drones. And since the time of originally signing, a war has ensued in Ukraine, which has impacted on the deal. And if you go and you look into it, you'll understand why. So that's and a few other reasons are why the deal is being restructured. Ultimately, what is being done is for the benefit of Vira Drones and also for ILUS and also for the shareholders. So we will have the drones we envisaged. They will be developed, and that's what's really important, and that's what's going on behind the scenes. In any case, as I alluded to in that question earlier, it's not a profitable business for some time to come. So it's important that we structure things correctly, and that does take time, especially when Vira is busy. And we're also very busy with our own more urgent and, I would say, far more profitable things that are underway.
Great. That makes me very excited because that is one of my favorite acquisitions that you guys have. Many shareholders have expressed desire to see more regular informative tweets from the company in the way of product demos, statistics on fire and safety, and increased marketing. We've seen some nicely done graphics by the team in the past, but this year has been fairly silent on that front. Will we see more of that aspect going into the end of this year and 2023?
Yeah, for sure. Look, we're conscious of that, and we need to ramp that up for sure. It just comes down to where our focus is as a business and our bandwidth to actually do it. So since Claire left us, for family reasons and things like that, there has been a definite gap in that area of the business. I acknowledge that. We've since then hired a very capable marketing manager, Sahini. She's great, and she's driving forward that marketing department, which includes 3 other members. But the reality is that our marketing focus itself is largely on product marketing for the business. And I think the difference is that, and I don't think a lot of shareholders necessarily realize this, right? That in the trenches, we are very sales focused and not always necessarily shareholders focused. I know a lot of shareholders expect us to provide a lot of things for them, but the reality is that we're in the trenches running a business, right? You don't get to 20 million a quarter by just pandering to shareholders all the time, right? I'm sorry to say it, but and people will no doubt be offended by saying something like that. But the reality is, when you look back, you will see a business that's constantly increased in value. If we change our focus, and people may say, well, why don't you just have a department that looks at this area? Why don't you have a department that looks at that area? Well, when you look at our financials, you don't think of it like that, right? You'll say, well, why was your profit not high enough in the last quarter? Oh, because we had to hire this person and that person and this person and that person. This guy's salary was 100,000 a year, and his was 120, and hers was, and all of a sudden you're making zero profit, right? And you've not really progressed as a business. All you've done is delivered a whole lot of stuff. Your shareholders are happy until they see your financials, and then they're unhappy. So it's a vicious cycle. And I think that's why we're a valuable business that is performing consistently, and that's something which isn't reflected in our share price. And maybe to our detriment, right, is why I said it. I acknowledge it's an area we do need to improve. But I'd argue that other companies on the OTC are only focused towards their share price and not on their actual business. And that's why they're not going to be around in a year's time. That's that vicious cycle that I was alluding to. But that said, again, it's something we need to pick up. And I actually discussed it in a meeting with Sahini the other day. And so she's picking up activity. You might have seen there's been a few tweets from the ILUS marketing channel recently, but that's going to be featuring a lot more. She's wanting to call that something along the lines of the daily life of ILUS and its businesses. So you'll see a lot more featuring just things that are going on, whether it's meetings in the office in Dubai or meetings from our travels, from demos, sales presentations. She's going to start featuring a lot more of that information. So just on the buy, just during the course, and some of it might be quite menial, and some of it might be quite big, important things too. So she's been tasked with that, and I think that'll start to improve.
Cool.
Apologies for that.
Oh, that's fine. With the upcoming ERT IPO approaching, are there plans to hire more people with the pedigree that Dan Peters brings to the table?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, you're assuming it'll be an ERT IPO. So God, I would say, look, just stay tuned.
All right.
We don't say calm before the storm for nothing. So, but along the lines of bringing more experience into the team, we are planning to add more to the team, more people like Dan Peters, and we have identified and we have been speaking to those individuals. So, but I think just to be very, very clear and clarify, we've never confirmed an IPO or an IPO date. It's very clear, though, for those who've been following our journey, that we are busy, that we are on track, and what we are doing is very exciting for all involved with us, and I suppose consequently probably very disappointing for those who are not, right? So.
Okay, and I think you answered this earlier in regards to Georgia Fire and Rescue. Will ERT or any other ILUS subsidiary be attending next year's FDIC convention in Indianapolis? And will any of the management be official speakers at the 2023 convention?
Yes, we'll be attending. No, I did apply to do a presentation actually on the integration of new generation wildland firefighting technology. I actually applied to do a presentation. I got to the final round, but wasn't accepted. So maybe it's my big bald head and I'm, no male model or something like that. Or maybe it's just the fact that we didn't fork out a big enough sponsorship. Who knows? But my understanding is that largely gets allocated to those who are fairly big sponsors of the event. It probably didn't help that I had a huge argument with the organizers of the event, because at the event itself this year, I put us down to keep the same location for next year. I thought it was a very good location. We got good footfall, good attention. We got some orders as a result of it. And I think it was good for all aspects of the business. But they wanted to move us to the Lucas Oil Stadium, which is in a different, it's a few hundred meters away, I guess. And in my opinion, that just doesn't have the same footfall. And they've been moving a lot of companies to that side. So I had a heated exchange with the organizers on Zoom, and we managed to come to an agreement. So I don't think it helped my cause for being a speaker, or even for Dan Peters, for example, being a speaker at the event. But ultimately, we'll be at FDIC. We'll be there with our various businesses. And I think also bear in mind that we may not be there registered as ILUS, but under an acquired company, right? It's important, it's important to note that.
Awesome. So what are you most proud of from the company this year so far? And what would you do differently if you could, looking back?
Yeah, so look, it might sound cliched, right? But I'm really proud of what we've accomplished as a business, of what we have already established against a lot of odds. To many on the OTC who only look at share price, they might disagree with me. I think we've accomplished huge, huge things. And that's in terms of our performance as a business. I mean, that's where I'm incredibly proud of what we've built in a relatively short period of time. The launch pad, most importantly, that we've put in place for where we're going, and that's pretty soon. And that's what's really exciting. I'm sure we've made mistakes along the way. The reality is we're just a bunch of normal people, Eric. We happen to be incredibly determined and incredibly passionate about what we're doing. But I'm sure we've made some mistakes along the way. If I were, though, to single out anything that I would do differently, it would probably be to, sometimes I think we could have gone bigger sooner. And by that, I mean perhaps we could have aligned things and done bigger deals sooner. Now we have the momentum, and hindsight is one of those things, right? But we have the momentum, we have the confidence, we have the backing, and we're busy with doing those bigger deals. But arguably, from my perspective, perhaps we could have taken on those challenges sooner, because we're certainly very capable of delivering on that front. That said, we're rolling out our strategy, we're accomplishing what we set our minds to, we're delivering as a company, and you'll see that always be evident in our filings. And that's why overall I'm incredibly proud of ILUS, and I'm incredibly thankful to those who've supported us along this journey, right? So I understand it's been frustrating for many, lots of ups and downs along the way, but I'm incredibly thankful for the support of our long-term shareholders. I'm incredibly proud of the business, and it's early days. There's huge things around the corner. Next week, next month, next year, we keep going onwards and upwards.
Awesome. JP, thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your thoughts. I appreciate it. The ILUS Discord appreciates it. The shareholders appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Eric. Yeah, thanks to the ILUS Discord as well for their support. And thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Well, we look forward to having you back on sometime next year to share your progress with us. And to all those watching, if you enjoyed this interview, like it, share it, subscribe it. I would also like to give another big shout out to the Discord, Rickers, Egal, Jord, Arlex, all of the mods. It's been great, and I can't believe it's almost going on 2 years now. I also want to give a shout out to Mrs. Erock for the BFC swag. Yes, once we hit 1,000 subs, we're going to do some merch. Also, BFC will be donating $200 to Florida hurricane relief. Who's going to match me? Jord Hugga, are you going to match me? Are you in? I think he's in. You guys have an awesome day, and remember, there's more that binds us than breaks us. Peace out, guys.